suites, and so on and so forth, which are really making sure that the front end, which is brand and forward, are really getting enhanced digitally. However, the back end is something that is still in the nascent stage. This may not be unique only to lifestyle industry, but across all industries, this might be applicable. But even so, in the lifestyle industry itself, we see that it has really been much bare bone closet as far as the back end is concerned. In this regard, what happens is that while the whole objective of getting the digital enhancement on the front end is really to improve your business and operational performances, but the back end being digitally nascent results in those age-old problems that we still face to continue, be it long lead times, no real-time visibility, deliveries getting delayed, quality issues cropping up, short deliveries, and so on and so forth, which also therefore mean that the value which it gets unlocked in the front end is limited. You still need to do those forecasts. You still need to do it for a long time. The longer you do the forecast, the more inaccurate it gets. Your market responsiveness gets really retarded because of the long lead times as well. You have to bear with shrinking the window of sales because of the fashion cycle becoming smaller and smaller. And even in that, if you have delayed deliveries, then you really are in a situation where you have a very, very low lead time, low sales window to be able to sell your products. That results in sales losses, and therefore inventory pileups happen. Your cash gets locked. To remove that particular problem, you end up doing discounting. There's a huge pressure on discounting. Therefore, it results in a value erosion for you. And finally, your profitability also gets really badly hit. What we are trying to do in this space, therefore, is to bridge this gap in the back end. It's not a magic wand, but we are trying to enable it as much as possible. We have two suites. One is the sourcing suite, which is aimed towards the brands, the retail chains, and the sourcing organizations, which also is end-to-end in nature, right from onboarding the vendor through compliances and QMS portals, going through various stages of the product development and sampling into the costing phase. We also have the production T&As and so on, which actually is one of the main agendas for today. We also have a quality module. It's a fairly nifty module, which is enabling quality digitization at a fair clip. And we also have certain other planning and collaboration tools which are being enrolled. On the manufacturing suite side, it's a complete ERP in itself, but meant more within the four walls of the manufacturing organization, encompassing the whole lifecycle management of the orders, production planning control, and so on and so forth. This is with an objective that we will end up with a sourcing and supply chain ecosystem, which is A, transparent, B, reliable, and C, flexible. Making sure that all the problems which were there because of the backend being undigitized or analog is really getting unlocked. So OTIF improvements happen, lead time reductions can be enabled, productivity enhancement is really something which will be happening, especially of your merchants. Your whole ecosystem will work in sync. Defects start reducing, so you get a huge first time right. You have cost optimization happening, and finally a zero error collaboration rather, which is something which drives the whole ecosystem. Making sure that while you scale, you will be still sustainable on the back end as well. What we do, therefore, is to provide you a platform where all the various stakeholders who are involved in this process, in this whole workflow management process of the sourcing and supply chain, are talking to each other on the same in the same language. They're looking at the same numbers. There's a single source of truth which drives and resonates through the system. Every comment, every approval, every action is tracked, and especially as you see in these times when work from home is becoming a norm, there is going to be a digital solution which is helping out you guys in terms of making sure that your operations don't go haywire. Blue Cactus is a company which has a heritage of about 2 decades. We dovetail technology with the industry and domain expertise. We do get into implementations at a fairly rapid clip. We don't want to prolong the implementations and bring in fatigue. We also are looking at cutting edge AI and ML prediction and prescription capabilities being incorporated. And finally, we make sure that we integrate with your systems which are already in place. We have about 350 odd customers who are on our platform, and we have executed more than 550 projects Apart from these, we also have 1,000 odd vendors who are there by virtue of our enterprise clients. The enterprise client list is as unfolds. We have the likes of the powerhouse of Arvind with its brands of US Polo, Arrow, Flying Machine, and so on. We have the Mintras and the Amazons and the landmarks of the world. And we are in a position to really make sure that these companies with the whole vendor ecosystems are talking to each other on our platform and unlocking the value which is really there, which is up in the back. So this is about the context. Just to give you an overview of what the whole Blue Cactus suite of the sourcing ecosystem looks like. And this is, as I said, in entirety flowing through from one stage to the other, end to end in scope, but also interconnected to the extent that we can also make sure that it is deployed modularly. As I said earlier, we make sure that it is also collaborating with your applications. Let's move on therefore now. I hope we have got the context right. Now let's move on to the main course for the evening. It's leveraging T&A. Gunish, over to you.
Right. Thanks. Thanks, Sarang, for the introduction and setting the tone. And I'm just going to share my screen. All right. I hope everyone can see. And so we're coming to the main course of our presentation today and talking about how TNAs can be leveraged. And the focus of today's webinar is going to be on some of the industry practices and what are the things which work and what things I think one should avoid. So I'll just talk a little bit based on my experience and the experience we've had in implementing systems across hundreds of factories and in brands across the length and breadth of this country, as well as some international customers. So what is the objective of a TNA? And I think it sounds very simple, but it's actually sometimes people miss the objective. Hello? Okay. The primary objective of a TNA is to ensure delivery is met in the most cost-efficient manner. I want to highlight the fact that the delivery is met, and the second is a cost-efficient manner. And how does it do it? Is it by aligning the different stakeholders? I will talk about each of these aspects in a little bit more detail, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I have seen in the industry and what I see as companies and organizations which have really leveraged TNA very, very effectively to be able to execute orders on time. As we all know, our industry is, we are a perishable commodity. Apparel or fashion is a perishable commodity, and getting the right product at the right time is extremely important. So let's look at the different types of stakeholders which are there. So you've got merchandising, or you can talk about designing, merchandising, fabric, trims, and your production departments. So broadly speaking, there are these four key stakeholders in any sourcing or manufacturing entity which is trying to get the goods out into the market in a timely manner. So like I mentioned to you, the objective of a TNA is to have on-time delivery in the most cost-efficient manner by aligning the different stakeholders. With that said, let's look at some of the best industry TNA practices which I've seen some of the better companies follow and their approach to a TNA. First, a TNA is not supposed to micromanage people. I remember seeing lists where TNAs have a huge number of activities, and the idea was that nothing gets missed. Actually, what ends up happening is the TNA just becomes a checklist. It just becomes a to-do list. That's not a TNA, the right use of a TNA or the right purpose of a TNA. It should not be used to micromanage people. If you're using it to just micromanage, then I think a simple to-do list every morning is good enough. Or a simple Excel sheet is good enough to be able to, just say that, am I covering everything that is supposed to cover? But a TNA is not supposed to do that. Ideally, you should not have more than 12 to 14 activities in a TNA. If it's too small, you're not covering everything. If it's too detailed, you've got 30, 40 activities, then there's just too much tracking which is going on. And there is obviously every time you track something, there's an effort to track it. So it is not giving you the bang for the buck. So choosing and selecting the right activities is important. And I'll come to the later part of my presentations where I'll talk about TNA templates and some of the best practices on that. Ideally, you would want at least about 50% or around about 50% of the activities should be updated automatically rather than manually somebody ticking it. So I think here integration with your existing systems becomes extremely important. So when you're creating your TNA, look at what activities will have to be updated manually by somebody and what activities can be updated automatically. This piece is very critical. The purpose of a TNA is to focus on inter-department coordination. It's not a checklist alone. If it's supposed to be my checklist saying, okay, what I'm supposed to do, then TNA is not really necessary. What a TNA does is it tells a person X of what a Y is doing. So what are the different departments between merchandising and fabric, between merchandising and trims and store, between vendor and merchandising, between planning and merchandising or planning and fabrics. So the idea is, how do you align all these different stakeholders? In a lot of organizations, what ends up happening is each department or each maintains their own TNA or their own set of activities in their own silo. And every time they need to have information from the other department, they all are maintaining their own separate TNAs, and none of them actually have visibility into what the other person is doing. A good TNA, actually, its primary focus is interdepartmental coordination. Third, it has to be linked to KPIs. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. So if something is not, if you build something, a TNA, it is not linked to key performance indicators, then people will not take it seriously. It will not be followed as rigorously as you would want it to be followed. At the end of the day, what are we trying to do is we are trying to actually get the right behavior from people, from different stakeholders. What is the right behavior? One, they are doing things in a timely manner. Two, each department knows what the other department is doing so that the handover from each to the other is smooth. There's visibility and there is transparency. Next, it should be easily reviewed. If it's a complex Excel sheet where only the person who's updating is understand what is happening, it is difficult to follow and review. It also summarizing TNAs, looking at some of the key activities and milestones is important so that the review process becomes more focused and gets you better bang for the buck. Version management and comparison. This is one aspect I have seen is sometimes missed when people are looking at TNAs. Generally, when people are doing reviews, they are looking at the snapshot of what has happened, what is the status at that moment. They are not comparing it with what the snapshot looked like maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So I think comparison between what was the status a week earlier versus what is now is extremely important to see where the trend is. How many styles have improved their position? How many styles have deteriorated? Which are the problems which we were looking at last week and what are the problems we are looking now? If let's say I had 50% of my orders for the month of June on time, after a week, is it still showing that now 50% of my orders in June will be still on time, even though I'm sitting in April? So I think version management and comparison between the snapshots from month to month or a week to week is extremely important when people look at it, because that tells you the trend analysis. So a good TNA starts with a good template. So today I'm just going to outline what are the steps you should follow in designing a strong TNA and driving it in your organization. Start with a template. A template institutionalizes experience in the company. A template is nothing but saying, what is my standard SOP? How many days should I take to do something? Who should do what activity? Who should be informed that once an activity is completed? If an activity is not completed on time, who should it be escalated to? So a template is not just a list of activities, it is actually a complete workflow with an escalation matrix, with a notification matrix, as well as how the standards you would want to follow in your company. Creating templates is actually an art. It requires a lot of effort, and I have seen a lot of times people make mistakes when creating templates. Creating templates requires a lot of experience and a lot of understanding of what will work. So first, I'm going to highlight some of the best practices that one can follow in creating TNA templates. First, key milestones should be defined and understood. Don't have 20 milestones, have those 3, 4, 5 key milestones. So in our industry, it could be gold seal sample approval or cost approval closure. One milestone could be a fabric in-house, PP meeting, or your PCD, first time when you get the goods into production, final inspection. So these could be your 4 or 5 key milestones. All these milestones should be very, very clearly understood and defined across the departments. Second, a TNA cannot become very, very complicated. Like I said, a TNA is not supposed to micromanage people. Don't try to go for a perfect solution. Go for something which works reasonably well. Getting to perfectionism will be difficult. Keep fine-tuning what you have and keep improving on your templates. Certain standard milestones should cut across all your brands, customers, or vendors. For example, you want fabric in-house. That could be a standard activity across your TNAs, so that when you, at an overall company level, you want to judge how your performance is, you can measure different departments and different customers and different vendors and different types of products across some standard parameters that you would want to follow. So what examples I was giving you about, gold seal sample, cost closure, a lot of these, what I'm telling you, are key milestones which will cut across every product category. So defining them and standardizing them is extremely important and useful for your analysis. Templates should be more lead times based. So lead time means you could have a 90-day lead time or a 45-day lead time. And typically these lead times are a function of the kind of fabric and the kind of production process you might have. So if it's a difficult fabric, you might have a shorter lead time of the fabric. If it's a simple cut and sew, then the production lead time will be smaller. If it's got processes like washing or embroidery, you might have some extra days that you're using. So create templates which are lead time based, so that it's easier for you to know which template is relevant for which kind of a product. Next, keep it realistic, no buffers. And this is our industry, and people love saying that I've got 2 weeks buffer, 3 weeks buffer. We tell somebody else that this is due on 15th of April, whereas the actual date is 30th of April. What ends up happening is, what I have seen is, everybody figures out what the buffers are. You would think it's kept a secret. It's probably used for some negotiation, but everybody figures out what buffers you have. So when you say a deadline of 15th of April, people don't take it as seriously, because they'll say, what, if I slip by 5 days, nothing happens. The roof doesn't fall off, right? So keep your TNAs realistic so people can meet those, but keep no buffers. That means everybody should have the right picture. Even if you're keeping buffers, let everybody know that you've kept this buffer, so that everybody actually has transparency. I'll give you a very interesting example. I came across this company many, many years ago. And I remember the merchandiser was keeping a 2 weeks buffer in every order. The production team and the fabric team, in their thought process, felt that the merchandiser was keeping a 4-week buffer. So everybody was imagining what the other person was doing, as a result of which, when the deadline was passed, even 1 week later, 2 weeks later, and by the end of the 2 weeks, the merchandiser is freaking out. But the production and the fabric people think that in their mind, they've already breached the deadline. So might as well breach it by a few more days. The earth is not going to fall off. So I think, it lands up in a situation where people are all, moving, looking at different targets. Focus on cost efficiency and interdepartmental coordination. I mentioned to you the objective of the TNA is to improve coordination between different departments. The objective of the TNA is to deliver the product in the most cost efficient manner. You deliver it in the most cost efficient manner by giving as many days in production as the production team needs. So it's not just about meeting the order delivery date. It's actually, frankly, meeting your on-time PCD date. The real action happens before the garment gets cut or the fabric gets cut. If the fabric is not being cut at the right time, then either your delivery is going to be late or you're going to be making the garment with a very, very heavy cost on quality as well as efficiency. Next, I want to talk a little bit about some of the best industry practices on reviews. And our industry, especially on the manufacturing side, is notorious for not doing reviews properly. I always look at reviews from a pyramid, which goes from bottom to top, which is reactive to proactive. So just to show you or explain you the screen, at the bottom of the pyramid is ad hoc reviews. So this is when a review happens, when some crisis has happened, some orders are late, the boss calls you for a meeting and there is a crisis. There was no set timelines when you want to do reviews. So you have, it's sporadic, it's fits and starts. There is no interdepartmental coordination. People sit on it and actually people are, blaming each other. And actually it's more of a analysis on, it's a post-mortem analysis rather than what is going to be done moving ahead. And typically these meetings, people are working more like a checklist, fairly non-productive. I would say a good percentage, especially on the manufacturing side, their reviews happen probably, unfortunately, in the bottom half of this pyramid. Next type of reviews are transactional. These are medium-term, agendas, where essentially these are order by order reviews. Typically, there is a weekly cycle where people are reviewing the TNAs, reviewing the status of orders. These are time-consuming reviews. What I have typically seen is that during these reviews, people are not really preparing. So what happens is people look at an order and say, what's the status of this order? Then somebody says, I spoke to this, And at that time, the discussion happens. And what ends up typically happening in the first, 75% of the meeting is spent in the first 5 orders. And for the rest 50 orders, we hardly have any time left. So it is characterized by little preparation done by the stakeholders. And it's a very transactional way of doing meetings. When you go up, then you go to trends type of meeting. These are meetings where maybe it happens once in a month, where KPIs are reviewed, looking at what was the OTIF, what was the on time in full for a particular month, what are the problem areas that you're having. People need to be prepared for meetings and have their notes ready, and they're already there in the system. So before the review meeting starts, the reviewer and the reviewee have already looked at the system and have already seen what is the responses everybody has. So when the actual meeting happens, the real focus is on the real problems. People are prepared for the meetings and are not actually, asking questions which are out of the blue. Also, I think it's very important to have your people, when you do a review meeting, I do review meetings. I like to let people know what are the things that I'm going to be reviewing, so that the people who are coming to me for a review are actually prepared for it, have the answers, and wherever they are getting stuck, that's the kind of questions they'll be asking, rather than at that time people are giving answers and there and then you're trying to absorb it and actually take a decision accordingly. At the top of the pyramid are meetings which are improvement based. So these meetings, nobody is discussing orders. People are looking at trends and analysis. So what were the lead times? The focus on these meetings is, how do I improve my parameters? So can I, if I, instead of 60 days, can I do 55 days? Can I do 50 days? If instead of having a production, can I do these kinds of products? What is more things that I can offer to my customers and to my brands? So at the top of the pyramid is where companies improve and actually gain competitive advantage. So what I'd like to, for all of you to kind of think about is, where your company is in each of those pyramids, how many of your percentages of your meetings are ad hoc, are transactional, are trends, and are improvement based, and what can we do with our data? Because the higher up you go, the more data that you need to be able to make that kind of analysis, right? Next, I'll just give you some examples of types of reviews and reports and dashboards people use. So something like a typical order review meeting, it's a transactional meeting where we are seeing overall health card of where the orders are currently, at what stage of the process we are, how many orders are on time, which orders are facing problems. Typically, it's a transactional meeting where we are trying to figure out what are the next, immediate steps to be done. Of course, these are important, not denying that, but these are typically very, very operational driven and transactional driven meetings. And next is a trends review meeting. An example of that is you see on this screen. You can see different activities and their on-time performance. You can see, get an analysis overall, which are the areas which are problem areas. So identification of problems happens through these KPIs and trends review meeting. Is your on-time performance improving, decreasing? And what action you can take to be able to improve your on-time performance, or whichever areas you are looking to identify a problem, or you've identified the problems. So these are typical data dashboards you should have to do your trends review meetings. Other trends review could be, what are the reasons for delays? Can I look at what reasons, what are the primary reasons for delays? So just have simple, dashboards where you can analyze some of the problems that you're having, and then deep dive into what you could be doing. Some examples of an improvement meeting could be when you're studying your lead time. In this particular example that I'm showing you is, you're looking at different activities and how many days you are planning for an activity and actual days being spent. So an interesting thing, when you review it like this, you will figure out that where am I losing days? So which are the areas where I need to really, push my days down? Second, is my planned days even correct? So for example, can I, reduce the planning days for size set approval from 10 days to 4 days? Because when there is a pressure from buyers and brands to keep shortening lead times, how do you shorten your lead time? You make people work harder, which is not a sustainable thing. Second is, I improve my process. And this is where you can figure out which areas or processes are taking time, which areas and processes can be cut, can be reduced. And you will notice there are some low hanging fruits which can immediately give you benefits in terms of improving lead times, getting on time performance, and making some basic improvements in the parameters of your business. Now that I've talked about what are some of the best TNA practices in terms of templates, in terms of review meetings, and how should you go about, what should the focus of a TNA be? One of the challenges I have seen is, how do I sustain it? I put in a certain good TNA practice. How do I ensure that 1 year, 2 years from now, people are still using it and people are still following it? People should not, in companies, people come and go, and you don't want a situation where people, you take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. How do you do that? First and foremost, you link it with KPIs. So whenever you very clearly define KPIs that you have with your teams, they should be linked with the reviews that are happening on the TNA from the system. So for example, on time performance, did you do your, for somebody, the KPI or the KRA could be, have I reduced my lead time? The target was to reduce the lead time by 5 days. Have I been able to do that? Because people will only be able to do that and present data once they've, following a stringent system of TNA. Create a review cycle. Very, very important. Put in a specific date or time of the week where you're doing the review. Don't give people surprises and call them for ad hoc meetings. They are very, very traumatic and very traumatic for the people who's going to be reviewed, because they are not prepared for it. So let people know what day it is, so they are well prepared, for a meeting, and they have answers and they give solutions. Keep it visual. The more visual the reports are, the better it is for people to analyze. Going through a complex Excel data is difficult. It is possible, but it is It is very time consuming, and it makes difficult for you. It is difficult for you to actually quickly hone into the right problem. Record your discussion notes. So if you have a review meeting, have somebody making notes of what discussions have happened, what action was taken, what actions were discussed. And the first order of business in the next review meeting is to first look at all the agreed points in the previous meeting and make sure they were closed. This is a very, very important piece. Very often we don't maintain those notes of the meeting. The first order of business of every review meeting should be to discuss and say, these were the 10 action points we had in the previous meeting. Have they been closed or not? People should be very clear that this is the first thing that will be done, and anything which was meant to be closed or actioned has not been actioned. It is a big red flag. In fact, it is the biggest red flag that we have. Okay. Do not spend on an average of more than 1 minute per order. This is more of a focus for the manufacturers. I don't know about brands. Maybe the numbers will be different. If you're spending more than a minute on an average per order, then something is not very efficient. Either your information gathering is not correct, or the people are not preparing well enough for meetings. So time yourself and make sure that you're not spending more than a minute per order if you're going order by order. Like I mentioned to you, keep it visual. So just have simple statistics on on-time performance, key parameters. So here you got your final inspection performance, on-time in full performance, how many orders you have in track, how many orders are not on track, are in critical stage, so etc. So you can double click on that and get more data. So keeping it visual is extremely important. Some other examples, make it easy. So data updation should be easy, simple. It's not a magic wand that you will make it easier day one. But I think having focused on that and constantly looking at how do we make usage of the application or the TNA easier to users, that will make it more sustainable in a longer term. So mobile is a big way to make things easy for people. Everybody's now used to a smartphone. Nobody's taught how to use WhatsApp. So try and see how quickly and simple you can make your updation of the data. Finally, on sustaining it, fix up a time of day when you update TNA. So I'm just giving you simple, simple thumb rules. Fix up a time of day when you update your TNA. So that nobody comes back to you and say, oh, maine update nahi kara. I've done the work, but I've not updated it. So fix up a time of the day. I once came to a company where the merchants had put an alarm clock for 5 o'clock on their phones. So at 5 p.m., the alarm clock would run and they will know that they just have to quickly make sure that they've updated the TNA status. Because remember, the objective of the TNA is not to tell you what has happened. You know what's going on, what you're doing, but to let others know that something has happened. So for example, if the fabric department does not update their TNA, how will the merchant know that the fabric status is going on? So it's actually a very, very important tool to make sure you're updating it because this information is relevant for others. Activities to be auto-updated should be entered in a timely manner. No pending entries, period. No pending entries. And keep focusing on automation. Keep figuring out how can I keep updating the TNA in an automatic manner. So for example, in a factory, if the fabric comes into your stores, rather than somebody separately, entering fabric in-house as a completed activity, you should link with your ERP system so that it automatically triggers that the fabric in-house is done. It triggers an email to people. It tells a reminder to people. So try to automate as much as possible. If activities are auto-updated, which sounds great, if those tasks are kept pending, for example, GRN was not done on the same day or was pending for 2 days, then the information is going to be outdated and you will not have timely and real-time information. So that discipline is extremely important. Hygienes to be reviewed. Finally, hygiene means to ensure that, so hygiene reports are typically reports which says, are all the orders in the system? When was the last time somebody, which user is not actually even logging into the system? Which orders have had no movement for the last 3 weeks in the system? So there are certain hygiene reports which should be reviewed maybe on a monthly or a quarterly basis to make sure that users all of them are using the system and to figure out which portions are not getting updated or being used on a timely manner. Training of new person on the TNA. So one of the things should be as part of the induction process, no matter which department a person belongs to, they should be updated on the TNA practices and of the company. It should be become part and parcel of an induction process of a company, just as you tell a person your leave rules and other HR things. This should become part and parcel of your induction practice with people. Train people on data analysis for companies which are really leveraging, and one of the things I've noticed is, especially in our fashion industry, a lot of our merchants, designers, and people involved are coming not from a very business background. They're coming from a fashion background, and they don't have, not a lot of them have ability to analyze data. It is an art. It requires practice. It requires training. So spending some effort and time on your people in helping them understand and do data analysis. I'm not asking you for everyone to become nerds and geeks to sitting on Excel sheets, but the ability to look at some charts and some information and to derive some conclusions out of that is extremely useful skill to have, and something which I believe people in the industry should be trained upon. So spend some time on that. Lastly, and this is my last slide, and then we can get to the questions. How do you know your TNA works? So I'll say, okay, I've done all these things. How do I know? A lot of times you will hear, oh, we're putting a lot of effort, but maza nahi aa raha, benefit nahi mil pa raha. We still, are, looking at the old ways of working. So let's look at some of the simple metrics. How much time is being spent on merchandising per style? And let me give you an example for the manufacturing setting. We've done numerous studies on merchandising efforts done by manufacturers across the industry. And of course, it varies from company to company. But I have come across companies where they are spending more than 100 hours per style on merchandising alone, more than 100 hours. It's a mind-boggling number. For my own company, also I noticed the actual number of hours was more than 25-30 hours. And when you actually try to list out where these hours are spent, even accounting for 10 hours becomes a challenge. So I think how much time is being spent on merchandising per style is something which one should track and monitor. There are simple ways to monitor it. If anybody is interested, you can please feel free to reach out to me, and I will show you, I'll explain to you in a very simple manner how you can do that. What is your on-time PCD? PCD is the holy grail of our business. If PCD stands for planned cut date. So if you're starting the style in a timely manner, you have the best probability to finish the goods or get the goods shipped out in a cost-effective manner. So tracking your on-time PCD is important. How often does planning need to change your plan? So measure and see how often you're having to replan. How often are you having to move things around? This is a measure of how well your TNA is working. If you're following your TNA thoroughly, properly, I'm not saying it's not going to be eliminated, this problem. You should have minimal firefighting, minimal chances of things moving around. What is your plan accuracy? So there is a number that you can derive, which is plan accuracy. Plan accuracy is simply what style into pieces you were thinking of producing on a particular day, and what style and number of pieces you actually produced. So the delta of that, the difference between that is your plan accuracy divided by total number of pieces. So it's a simple calculation to look at your plan accuracy. Monitor your plan accuracy number on a weekly basis. It's a very, very critical number. You will notice if your plan accuracy goes up, you will automatically notice your cost of production will come down, your on-time performance will improve, your quality scoring will improve. Are your lead times reducing without affecting your cost? So what is the average lead time of your company? If you went from 60 to 55 days, did your cost go up? Which means, are you having to load more lines, or have more line changeovers, or are you able to give enough time to your production lines? So are your lead times reducing without affecting your cost? So these are simple metrics. You don't need to have all the metrics that I'm mentioning, pick and choose one or two metrics to start with, start monitoring it, measuring it. This will give you a very good idea that whatever you're trying to do in terms of effort, is it yielding results? Because at the end of the day, the purpose of the TNA is to get the best on-time performance in the most cost-effective manner. So if you're not keeping a close eye on cost and not and you know ensuring that things are done on a timely manner, it is not either or. You need to do both. Keep your costs to the minimal, as well as ensure that you have timely deliveries. That's it. I will stop my presentation now. I think we've got about 15 minutes left for some question and answers. If people have questions, I have not looked at any queries coming in, but if people have questions, happy to answer any questions. Right. Okay, so Sarang, you're there?
Yes, Kunish, I'm here. We have a few questions which are popping up on our Q&A screen. I would request people to also start asking questions as they feel free. So there's one question which has come up. There are in fact quite a few. So the first question, let me take, Kunish. I'll pose that to you.
Sure.
The screenshots of the interface were from which app?
They were from our Blue Cactus app, which is the software we have. We have a sourcing suite and a manufacturing suite. So these are from the actual data that we have in our Blue Cactus application. We have a TNA module. The screenshots were from there.
There's another question which states, can you repeat the plan accuracy formula?
Okay, so so plan accuracy is number of style you just take, let's say on a particular day, how many, or a particular week, which style multiplied by how many pieces you were planning to produce. So let us say you had 10 styles. For each style you were planning to, let's say, produce 500 pieces during the week. So in total you wanted to produce 5,000 pieces. And then subtract that from, subtract all the styles you actually produce. So it is possible that 2 styles you did not even produce. And you produced fewer pieces or extra pieces of the styles you were actually planning. So take those two numbers and subtract what you were planning to produce from what you actually produced, and divide it by the total number of pieces you were planning to produce. So it's difficult for me to explain it on a verbal way, but probably I can send it across to, and with a simple Excel sheet, probably send it across to somebody who's interested in telling you how you should calculate your plan accuracy.
Right. Thanks, Manish. There's an interesting question here. Is daily TNA tracking meeting required, or is it okay to be done on a weekly basis?
I think a daily tracking meeting is a bit of an overkill. I think tracking your TNA on a daily basis is a review is difficult. One should review it for themselves only. But doing a collective review meeting on a daily basis is tough. It should be done on a weekly basis, and ideally, like I mentioned, put a time of the day or time of the week when this meeting happens. But again, the focus of the meeting should not be to do one by one activity tracking. It should actually be to say which are the orders which are on time, so you don't have any problems, which are the orders which have problems. And like I said, first order of business is always to look at what actions were supposed to have taken based on the previous meetings. So you notice that a particular order is going off track. So the decision was taken to call up the vendor and say, see what can be expedited, and put a target date for that activity or for that action, and ensure that the next review meeting, the first thing you order a business is, did that action take place? If it did, what happened and what was the result of it? So simple thing, and it should be recorded. Every review meeting should be recorded in your ERP system or your tracking system, so that we can go back and say what action really happened. Otherwise, improvements become a bit of a challenge. So do it weekly.
Um, Another question which has popped up, do you have anything to say how to come out of any TNA failure?
Offer?
For TNA failure, how do you come out of a TNA failure?
Depends on the failure, right? If the failure is a catastrophic failure, then you don't know. So it depends on the failure, right? If you have a TNA failure, what is to be done? I will tell you, just to also add, your ability to make money and your ability to be successful and to have high performance is based on your ability to foresee a problem rather than react to a problem. Now, it is not always possible to foresee every problem. That's the way life is. But the more you can foresee, the better it is. You will be able to take proactively and reduce failures. If you have a TNA failure, again, like I mentioned, it is depending upon the kind of failure. If it's a fabric failure, I always look at whether this failure is one-off or is it a systemic failure, which means a one-off event is a random event. It could happen to anybody. I was driving in a car. I was supposed to go to, somebody's house at 6 o'clock for a meeting. I had a car breakdown or my tire got punctured and I was late. Now I have to see whether that tire puncture, was it a freakish incident? Was it a one-off? That means there was some roadside glass strewn somewhere and I really could not anticipate it, could not, plan for it. But if I came for 5 meetings and in 3 meetings my car actually had a puncture, then I probably need to figure out something is wrong with my tires. There's a systemic failure. So failures will happen. That's the part of life. But I think analyzing why it's failed, is it a systemic failure or one-off failure? If it's a one-off failure, you really can't do much about it. If it's systemic failure, then you actually have to take and sit back and figure out what are the root cause of that failure and then take corrective action. But again, you can only determine if it's a one-off or systemic if you have data. A lot of times we in our companies actually go, are not data driven. We are anecdotal driven. Fabric fail हो गया इसका, तो ये तो बिल्कुल बेकार vendor है. This mill is useless because इनका तो fabric fail होता ही है. And then this, crisis comes in and, we overreact. But the first step would be, let's look at this, particular vendor mill and see how many failures this mill had in the last 1 year. If it was one off, that's fine. If it was quite often, then we have a problem. So I think, looking at failures in that respect would probably be a better way of, solving problems. I don't have a magic wand where I can tell you that failure hua to kya karo, but all I can say is the way you introspect is how you are able to actually benefit out of your failures.
There's another interesting question, Guneesh, something that you're working on, I know. So the question is, can the platform suggest corrective action plans automatically?
Yeah, very interesting. So I think if you have data, and today technology is there, and it's there also now on our Blue Cactus platform, where the system is actually looking at historical data, looking at what actions people are taking, and based on actions, what were the results of those actions. We can actually start predicting whether a particular style is going to run into a problem. If it will run into a problem, what kind of potential problems it could run into, as well as what action can be potentially taken, which will reduce the risk of failure. A failure at the end of the day for a style is non-on-time delivery or non-right first-time quality. So if your quality failure happened or on-time failure happened, that's a failure. Those are major failures. So if you have data to look at that, the system can predict. We call it institutionalizing experience in a company. So typically a lot of that resides in the heads of people. Based on experience, they'll know, I can see this trend, these orders are going to have a problem. But if you have a lot of data, the system will be able to predict and tell you fairly accurately what kind of problems could come and what kind of corrective actions will reduce the probability of a failure.
Right. This is a very pertinent question for the situation. How do we construct a realistic T&A during such pandemic situations?
Yeah, how do you in a pandemic situation, the first thing I would recommend is wear a mask and do social distancing. So that's an important part of, ensuring that you don't have TNA failure. But that was on a lighter note, and I know, and it's very important. I'm here in Delhi, and it's a real crisis here in Delhi, as in a lot of parts of the country. Yes, exactly. I mean, you got a pandemic situation, you have a failure. How do you plan for it? Again, I go back and say, is it a systemic failure or a one-off failure? If we realize that we're going to have a pandemic every year, then we have to plan for it, correct? But if pandemic was a one-off event, nobody really can plan for it, because if you plan for a pandemic all the time, then you'll have a situation where you are planning for an event which might happen once in 100 years. So again, the answer for that is determine whether it's a one-off event or if it's a systemic event. If it's a one-off event, what can you do about it? Of course, you will do some firefighting where you will do it, but you can't plan for a pandemic, or you should not. Or last 6 months you should have, in terms of, because the pandemic, everybody was aware of it, but you got a pandemic, you got problems coming in, you have to figure out what is the corrective action you have to take at that particular, because this requires firefighting. You can't plan for it.
There are a couple of questions which are regarding trial and reaching out to Blue Cactus for getting enrolled. We'll provide you a couple of phone numbers which can actually be tracked, right, Guneesh? Is that how you would like them to reach out to us?
Please feel free to reach out to us. We'll provide details, and if anybody wants to contact us, just go to our website bluecactus.com and go to contact us page, send an inquiry, or we've got people here. Maybe what we could do is, post this session, we could just for everybody who is registered, we could send the contact details, and they can reach out to us.
Right. There's a question with regard to the platform itself, in terms of how the template construct can happen. Is there a set formula which activity dates take automatically as defined by the company, or has it to be fed for every single style?
So that's what the whole purpose of a template is that you create your own formula where you do target dates, which are calculated OPD plus or TOD minus. OPD is order placement date, TOD is time of delivery. So you can have either backwards or forward calculations, and the system also, you look at critical path. Is it a milestone activity? Is linked to another milestone? Is it linked to another activity? Is it a parallel activity or sequential activity? All those you define in your template. And the moment you have an order and you apply that template to that particular style, based on the order date and the delivery date, it automatically generates all the activities with the relevant roles all defined and created for people. And those people are already informed that these are a set of activities they need to do. So, yeah.
This is a very pertinent question, I think, which concerns a whole lot of us. For any delays in cycle time, the manufacturer gets the beating of shrinking his timeline. He's the one who carries the baton in the last leg of the relay race, right? So can the system map the department-wise delays, or what I think the question is also pointing out, how do we really make sure that it doesn't get concentrated on the manufacturer?
A very good question, a very relevant question, because, I have looked at, so one of the screens you would have, if people remember on this, I was showing you, was lead time analysis, which is planned days and actual days. A very interesting thing we noticed when we were implementing it at customers was that invariably the initial 5-7 activities would be running into delays. So if we had planned for 5 days, people were spending 8 days. If you were planning, 8 days, people were spending 12 days. And then at the end of the day, they thought they're going to give 28 days for production. And eventually production, we were noticing almost in every single case, in these companies, the production was planned for 28, it was happening in 15 days, 16 days. So essentially what was happening is that, you're losing days in, upfront, and then you are, catching up at the end. So it does happen. It's a big problem. The way it is analyzing your lead time. And this is when I talk about KPIs and improvements. So look at your lead time analysis and keep analyzing and saying, where are you losing your days? So that the people and the departments and the processes which are responsible for such delays are actually held accountable for. Because again, if you're producing a garment which was supposed to be done in 28 days, you're doing it in 15 days, you are compromising on quality, you're compromising on productivity, you're compromising on cost. So even though the order might go on time, in effect, you've actually, there was some money lost because of quality and compromises made on productivity. So analyzing lead times closely is very, very important. I always look at a PCT number. If the on-time PCT number is low, then there is definitely a huge problem in an organization or in any setup. So looking at few key milestones is important. It's 5:02 right now. If more people want to stick around, great. There any more questions, Sarang? I think we'll take.
There are a few questions. I think a couple of interesting ones also.
Ask two questions and wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, two and at the most three questions I think we should be able to do. There's one question, I think you actually ruffled a few feathers when you mentioned about the buffer time being part of every single entity. So there's a question on that. Buffer time should be a part of T&A like PFD allowance in SAM, or it should be eliminated?
Okay, now this is a controversial argument sometimes, so my, and I can probably tell you it's my personal choice and something which I believe in and something which I've seen work is let there be a very transparent system. Let everybody know what the reality is and what the real targets are. Because what is important is the sanctity of targets is important, because the moment you start putting in buffers, then the sanctity of targets goes down. You can tell people, look, my target date, delivery date committed to the buyer is 15th of March. Let's shoot for 1st of March. We are shooting for 1st of March. But everybody should know what the reality is. If everybody keeps buffers, the buffers keep on adding up. And what ends up happening is the people then, 2 day delay is not a problem, or 4 days delay is not a problem. Who decides how many days is the problem? Is it 2 days, 4 days, 8 days? So I think it's a philosophical and an approach to management. People can go with whatever they want, but I think in terms of habit and discipline and just the mental approach, I think having transparency, because a lot of times I hear brands say, oh, we want transparency from our vendors. Fantastic. Let's start from our home and actually be transparent to our vendors. We have not told them what the real delivery dates are. We have not, but we expect them to be very, very transparent with us. So transparency is a two-way street. If you expect it from people, one should share it. But again, it's a philosophy. It is a controversial thing, but I still stand by it.
And actually something related to that in terms of, I think, change management. How to make it an effective T&A when we have people who are always working the traditional way instead of in a professional manner? This is a very important point, I feel, Guneesh, in terms of driving change management, especially in terms of embracing digitization.
Sarang, I'll lob the question to you. You've been involved in a lot of change management processes in your life. So why don't you add your comments to that? I know you are a big champion of that.
Yes. Well, I have been part of consulting assignments, and that's been my first half of my career, in fact. And I really had a lot of resistance in terms of getting through to people, in terms of changing their ways of working and so on. It's important, first of all, to kind of align them with the vision that what they're setting out to do is something which has an end goal in mind, which is a certain glory end goal in mind. And also to tell them that the path to this is where their support will be required. Along the way, obviously, what changes for them or what's in it for them, what's the win that they have, needs to be also reiterated. You can't just push and keep pushing them to reach the end line. You have to make sure that you give them a push initially, but you have to be able to tell them that once I give you this push, then it will give you that momentum whereby you will be able to run to the end line yourself. Right? So stakeholder alignment is very critical. And I think that's something that we have really seen making the lives of people quite quite good in terms of the digitization initiatives. Anything more to add, Guneesh?
No, I think one of the things where I always tell people is, you know, before you start a project, I think it's very important to get the stakeholders and buy-in into what they are doing, what the vision is. I think a lot of times communication from the top management is not as clear. People, are sometimes, scared and confused. What is the purpose of this new change? I'm not just talking about softwares and systems. I'm talking about any change that you have, whatever change you do in any organization. Sometimes the logic and rationale of that is not properly communicated. So I think communication is critical. A lot of times the senior management has a much better view of what is happening. So some things which might be obvious to them are not probably obvious to the down the road people. So I think communicating to these people to everybody is critical. Secondly, I think in terms of just making the system, I think no system is perfect. No system is going to be, user friendly from, the exactly perfect way. But I think constantly striving to that and listening to your users is, I think, extremely important. Now, we are all guilty of sometimes not doing it. I've been involved in a lot of change management processes. But I think I've seen, listening to the users is extremely important, and understanding what they're going through. The other thing I would always suggest, and I've seen companies which have done well in change management, is I think having a core team which is responsible internally for the change is important. A lot of quite a few instances I've seen where there's a new project which comes in or a new initiative, and the person who's been given or people who've been asked to do it, they already have 10 other things they have to do. They now have an 11th thing to look after. So for them it's just an extra burden. So I think figuring out what kind of time somebody needs to give to be able to do this, because at the end of the day we are all human beings, and we have a limited bandwidth and limited time. We have to make sure that we give people enough time rather than keep lobbying them and keep pushing them with more and more extra things. So I think handling that human aspect is important.
Absolutely. Right, Manish, we have a few more questions, but we have really exceeded the time by distance. So I guess we need to really.
We had to be on time, right? RTNA.
But it was great. It was great interacting with you guys. Thanks really for taking all the time on a working day, and all the participation has been great. We have a bunch of questions we couldn't answer, but I'm sure that you can reach out to us on a private session. We can do it offline as well.
Great. Thanks, Sarang, and thanks everyone. For anybody, what we'll do is we'll have the list of people who were registered, who were present today, and we'll send out an email to all of you. We'll also send out information and numbers where you could reach us out. And we'll love to interact with any of you who would be having any questions. It'll be great interacting with all of you. Thanks once again. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.